In this final lecture, we're going to take a look at an example paragraph that uses several quotes, paraphrases, and summaries of original sources, particularly following, in this case, MLA style of documentation for citing sources, doing so appropriately in order to avoid plagiarism. Now, the example paragraph is entitled "The Power of Music, Mystery or Manipulation," and it is written by an author named Audrey Fort. And what you are going to see as we analyze this paragraph is how Fort uses the words and ideas of other writers to comment on them and to support her own main points. After we analyze the paragraph, then we'll put it together, some of the skills you have learned throughout this series of lectures, and try to write a paragraph in the same way that Fort does. In red, I am highlighting the quotes from the authors other than Fort, the writer of this paragraph. In green, I'm highlighting how Fort is using her own words to paraphrase the ideas of others. And in bold black letters, I am highlighting how Fort shows you that these are not her words and ideas. That is, she's using reporting phrases, what is also called in-text citation at the beginning of the sentence usually, and through parenthetical citation or in parentheses usually at the end of a sentence. What you'll see is that Fort, the writer of this paragraph, is extremely adept at using language and using MLA conventions to weave these other writers' words and ideas into her paragraph without losing her own main points that she is supporting. Now let's take a look at the paragraph line by line and analyze how Audrey Fort uses the words and ideas of other writers to support her own main points. Audrey Fort's first sentence is, "History reveals that there has long been an awareness that music affects us, even if the reasons are not clear." Here, Audrey Fort is stating her main point in her own words. She follows this main point with another sentence introducing a source from another writer. She states, as early as 900 BC, for instance, King David played the harp, quote, "to cure Saul's derangement," end quote. Here she's providing an example from another source to support her main point that history has revealed some type of awareness that music affects us. In this case, she is citing Gonzales Cruci on page 69 and quoting "to cure Saul's derangement." Why does she quote the article Gonzales and Cruci on page 69? In this case, the word derangement is particularly useful for the writer Audrey Fort because it clearly signals a strong reaction to music. And then she follows this, suggesting that perhaps David might have been one of the first music therapists. Audrey Fort does this again with the next set of sentences in her paragraph. She states, "Music's positive influence may have also saved Beethoven's life in the early 19th century." So she's going to give us another example of how music affects people's lives, in this case, Beethoven's life in the early 19th century. The next sentence supports that statement when she cites another source with the sentence, "in a letter," reporting phrase, "the now famous Heiligenstadt Testament, Beethoven credits music with keeping him alive. Beethoven states, quote, 'I would have ended my life. It was only my art that held me back.'" Here, she first identifies the source, "in a letter, comma, the now famous Heiligenstadt Testament," the title of the source, "Beethoven credits." Here, credits is a reporting verb in the present tense. So she is introducing Beethoven's words in a particular letter called the Heiligenstadt Testament, and she does this in order to show that the quote, that this supports the statement, her main point, music's positive influence may have affected Beethoven's life. Now, notice in the parenthetical citation at the end of the sentence, or in parentheses, you have QTD period in Kamian 159. In MLA style, this means that the original source where this quote came from is the author Kamian on page 159. QTD means quoted. This means that Audrey Fort read Kamian's article on page 159, and Kamian was quoting, or QTD, Beethoven. Now, for undergraduates, it's okay to do that, I think, although you might want to ask your professor. For graduate students, it is less appropriate to cite a quote that you found in an article if that article didn't have the original quote. Let's move on with the rest of the paragraph now. In the next set of sentences, Audrey Fort, the author of this paragraph, shifts focus to the present time now. She states, even in modern times, though, we see such an effect that music has on our lives. These are Audrey Fort's words. Today, monks still use medieval Gregorian chants to maintain a sense of spiritual, emotional, and even physical well-being in their lives. Now she wants to support her main point with the words and ideas of others. She introduces a scientific experiment, or a sociological study, of contemporary monks to support her point about monks. She states, in her sociological study of contemporary monks, Marilyn Ferguson further explains. So here we have the identification of the source, which is a sociological study, and the author, Marilyn Ferguson. One point to bring about here that I may or may not have mentioned before is when you are using the name of a scholar of a source or a writer of a source, oftentimes you want to state their full name, Marilyn Ferguson in this case, the first time only, and then later only refer to the source by the author's family name or last name, in this case Ferguson. Now, I don't recommend that you use Mr. or Mrs., or you don't use Doctor or any title of that nature. The reason is because in academic writing and in academic presentations, you want to be as objective as possible. In this case, you don't really care about whether it is a man or a woman or about the writer's marital status. So that's why you really don't want to use Doctor or Ms. or Mrs., and you don't want to refer to the author by his or her given name or first name, like Marilyn. Rather, the first time, again, that you use it, you would say Marilyn Ferguson. Then any future times that you refer to the author or the article, you just say Ferguson. But certainly, again, ask your professor if you have concerns. So again, the sentence says, in her sociological study of contemporary monks, Marilyn Ferguson further explains, here we're using the present tense reporting verb explains because it is MLA style, further explains this power that music has over this population. Then Audrey Fort provides a summary, a general summary of what this study found. Ferguson particularly explains how monks deprived of chanting time grew sluggish. And then you see in parentheses, or in parenthetical citation, 587. This is a page number in which we assume Ferguson has stated something about how monks deprived of chanting time grew sluggish and tired and required more sleep. Continuing the paragraph, we see that Ferguson's findings are supported by the French physician Alfred Tomatis. Now, who is Alfred Tomatis? Alfred Tomatis is another author who had the same ideas as Ferguson. Notice, introduced as Alfred Tomasis, the first time with the author's full name. And the writer of this paragraph, Audrey Fort, is connecting Alfred Tomatis to Ferguson, stating that Tomatis also found the same things as Ferguson, thereby supporting Ferguson's main point. So it says that Alfred Tomatis, who found that, and again, we have sort of a summary here of all of Tomatis's work, found that monks tended to feel energetic again after experiencing lethargy during these, quote, no chanting stages, end quote, page 169. Now notice here that we've switched to the simple past tense in the reporting verb found, unlike previously where the author Audrey Fort uses the present tense explains. Why is this? Well, in part here, we are talking about studies or experiments of certain types. While it's unclear why Audrey Fort kind of does this, I can interpret that here with Alfred Tomatis' study, she's focusing more specifically on what was found, or by the end of the study by Tomasis. Whereas Ferguson, when she's talking about Fergus's study, she's not talking about what was found in the experiment, but she is summarizing more broadly what the text shows us in the present tense now. So now, given the strategies we have discussed so far, and given this outline of ideas, see if you can write out the first part of a paragraph using the information that I've provided for you on this slide. That is, put together a coherent and cohesive paragraph, one that flows from one sentence to the next in a very logical and fluent manner. Don't worry too much about using APA style or MLA style. It's more important that you just practice using the words and ideas, paraphrases, summaries, and quotes to support your own ideas, and start using reporting phrases and citations effectively. Now stop this lecture or pause this lecture to see if you can write out that paragraph. Now I'll show you my example of what I wrote using that same information. Compare and contrast my paragraph to your own and see what you come up with. So, was my paragraph very different from yours? What did you like most about my paragraph? What did you like least? Would you change my paragraph in any way to improve it? Could you give me some suggestions about how to continue the paragraph? If you like, send me an email and let me know what you think. Finally, here are two more slides. The first one about some suggestions I have for you, and the second slide just some useful resources online that you can consult in order to improve and develop further.